Imagine trying to take a selfie of over a billion people. Well, in 2011, that's pretty much what India did. Today, we're going to unpack the incredible story that this massive snapshot, the 2011 census, tells us about one of the world's most dynamic nations. So, where do we even begin with something this huge? Well, here's our game plan. We'll start with what a census actually is. Then, we'll get into why it matters so much. After that, we'll dive headfirst into the fascinating numbers that paint this incredible picture of India's people, its society, and of course, where they all live. All right, let's kick things off with that idea of a national selfie. Before we even get to the numbers, let's just absorb what it means for a country to look in the mirror on this kind of epic scale. So, what is a census, really? It is so much more than just a head count. Honestly, the best way to think about it is like a country taking this super detailed, official photograph of itself at one specific moment, capturing not just who lives there, but how they live. And believe me, this was not a simple point-and-shoot operation. The 2011 census was an absolutely monumental logistical puzzle. It was run by the Ministry of Home Affairs, and it happened in two main stages. First, this giant army of people went out across the entire country just to list and map every single home. Only after that was done could they go back for phase two, the actual counting of every single person. Okay, so you might be thinking, why? Why go through all of that incredible, complicated, and expensive effort just to count everybody? What's the point of it all? Well, the thing is, this data is literally the blueprint for the entire nation. It's not some abstract exercise. These numbers decide real-world stuff. They determine if your village gets a new school, where a hospital needs to be built, how they redraw the maps for elections, and who gets access to vital government programs. Seriously, this count has a direct impact on the life of every single citizen. Okay, now that we know why it's so important, let's get to the good stuff, the what. And just brace yourself for some seriously big numbers. And there it is, the headline number, 1.21 billion. Just let that sink in for a second. On March 1st, 2011, that was the official population of India. To put that into perspective, that's more than 1 out of every 6 people on the entire planet at the time. But here's where the story gets really interesting. It's not just about the total. Yeah, India added 181 million people in a decade. That's basically like adding the entire population of Brazil. But the crucial thing, as you can see, is that the rate of that growth was actually slowing down. For the first time in almost 100 years, the pace was decelerating, which hinted that a huge demographic shift was underway. Now, beyond just the raw numbers, the census gives us this incredibly high-resolution look into the social dynamics of the country. It tells us the human story behind all those statistics. And this chart right here? It tells a story of both amazing progress and a pretty significant challenge. The national literacy rate was up to 74%, which is a big jump, but it also throws a spotlight on this persistent gap, almost 17 points, between literacy rates for men and women. And you know, that literacy story isn't the same everywhere in India, not even close. On one end, you've got a state like Kerala, which at 94% was getting really close to universal literacy. But on the other end, you have a state like Bihar at just under 64%. It really highlights the enormous challenge of making sure opportunity is equal across all of India's very diverse regions. Now this slide, this is where things get really concerning. It reveals this contradiction. While the overall ratio of women to men in the population was actually getting a little better, the ratio for the youngest children, from births to age 6, had gotten worse. In fact, it was the lowest child-sex ratio since independence, which pointed to a very serious and deeply troubling issue. So, where do all these 1.2 billion people actually call home? Let's take a look at the geographical landscape of India's population. This right here shows you the unbelievable extremes in India. You have Uttar Pradesh, a single state with almost 200 million people. That's bigger than most countries. And then look at the density. Bihar is packed with over 1,100 people per square kilometer. Meanwhile, in the mountains of Arunachal Pradesh, that number is just 17. It's incredible. As this chart makes really clear, the heart of India in 2011 was still in its villages. Nearly 7 out of every 10 people lived in a rural area. But, and this is a big but, this snapshot also caught the very beginning of a massive shift. The urban population was growing way faster, signaling the start of this historic migration to the cities that would really define the next decade. The census also gives us a great snapshot of the nation's multi-faith identity. This chart breaks down the religious makeup of the country as it was recorded back in 2011, and it's a powerful visual of the diversity that's defined India for centuries.
So, as we start to wrap up our tour of this incredibly detailed picture from 2011, what are the final things we should remember? What made this particular count so historic?
Beyond the numbers, the 2011 census was a real landmark. A mind-boggling 2.7 million people were mobilized to get it done. It also kicked off something called the National Population Register. But maybe its most important social legacy was that for the very first time, it collected data on transgender individuals, a really crucial step toward recognition and inclusion. So, in the end, the 2011 census gave us this incredible portrait of a nation of unbelievable scale and complexity. It showed a country celebrating real progress while also staring down some profound challenges. It's a powerful reminder that a census isn't just a record of where we've been, but it's a vital benchmark for where we're going. And it leaves us with one critical question. After more than a decade of dramatic change, what story will the next census have to tell?